Hello, hockey fans, and welcome back to another episode of Whatever Happened To, the series where we take a where are they now look at players who found success in the National Hockey League but are no longer permanent fixtures in the league either due to controversy, poor play, or just rotten luck. In today's episode, we are going to be taking a look at an 8-year veteran of the league, as we ask, whatever happened to David Desharnais? Having gone unselected in each year of his eligibility for the NHL entry draft, David Desharnais spent his junior years with the Chicoutimi Saguenay of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. The Canadian forward used his 4 seasons in the Q to develop into quite the scoring machine, as he scored 374 points in just 262 regular season games, as well as 43 points in 52 playoff games. These impressive numbers also helped Desharnais earn a brief call-up to the AHL's Bridgeport Sound Tigers towards the end of the 06-07 season, where he scored 2 points in 7 regular season games. With his time in the juniors at an end, and with a handful of minor league games under his belt, Desharnais was ready to begin his career as a professional hockey player. Thanks to plenty of hard work, a lot of patience, and a hint of luck, he would surpass all expectations and find himself spending much of his career in the best league in the world. The 07-08 season saw Desharnais begin his pro career in one of North America's lower tier leagues, as he joined the Cincinnati Cyclones of the East Coast Hockey League. The undrafted forward continued where he left off in juniors by lighting up the scoreboard, as he scored 29 goals and 77 assists for 106 points in just 68 games. This outstanding play helped Desharnais earn another brief call-up to the AHL, this time with the Hamilton Bulldogs, where he notched a single assist in 4 games with Montreal's minor league affiliate before being returned to Cincinnati's roster. Once he rejoined the Cyclones, Desharnais helped the team embark on a deep playoff run by potting 33 points in 22 games, as Cincinnati won their first Kelly Cup as ECHL champions. Thanks to his high-scoring, championship-winning season, Desharnais had caught the attention of the Montreal Canadiens, who wished to see the forward play in Hamilton more often and make him a member of their organisation. So, on November 5th, 2008, the Habs signed Desharnais to a 2-year entry-level contract with the franchise. Having shown flashes of strong play during his brief stint with the Bulldogs, the Habs were hoping that Desharnais would find his footing in the AHL and become a legitimate minor league player. Luckily for Montreal, the undrafted forward would reach far beyond these expectations. With a shiny new contract in his back pocket, Desharnais spent the next 2 seasons predominantly with the Bulldogs, where the Canadian forward made a grand entrance by scoring 136 points in 127 games. This consistent point-per-game pace earned Desharnais his first call-up to the Montreal Canadiens roster to make his NHL debut during the 09-10 season, where he potted a single assist in 6 games before being sent back down for the rest of the season. Half a decade of hard work and perseverance, half a decade after being passed up by every single NHL team in every round of the draft, David Desharnais had just stepped onto NHL ice for the first time and had proved all of his doubters wrong. However, his best was certainly yet to come. After his 2-year contract had expired, and having shown glimpses of the type of player he could become, Montreal wanted to keep Desharnais around and see if he could take his game to the next level. So, on July 15th, 2010, they signed him to a 1-year, $550,000 contract. Though he had received only a small raise in his new deal, Desharnais was being given the opportunity to prove he could be an NHL player. And boy did he do just that. The 10-11 season saw Desharnais begin the year in Hamilton with the Bulldogs once again. However, After scoring 45 points in the first 35 games of the year, the undrafted forward earned another call-up to the Canadiens roster. Only this time, he would never look back. Desharnais spent the rest of the season in Montreal and had a productive outing for the Original Six franchise, as he scored 8 goals and 14 assists for 22 points in 43 games. This production helped Montreal book their place in the postseason, where Desharnais scored a single assist in 5 games, but the Habs were eliminated in the first round by the Boston Bruins. With his one-year deal up, and having shown he could not only play at the NHL level, but play well, Desharnais was due a noticeable pay rise. So, on June 20th, 2011, the Habs signed him to a 2-year, $1.7 million contract extension worth an average annual value of $850,000 a season. Despite only a modest increase in his salary once again, Desharnais had just signed his first $1 million deal, and was keen to grab a more permanent place on an NHL roster. Thanks to his play in the coming seasons, this contract would become quite the bargain for the Canadiens. The 11-12 season saw Desharnais put in a strong showing during training camp, earn a spot on the Habs' opening night roster, and suit up in his first full NHL season. The undrafted forward took this opportunity by the horns and used it to produce the best season of his entire NHL career, as he scored 16 goals and 44 assists for 60 points in 81 games, setting his career high in goals, assists, and points. Though he would showcase himself as a legitimate scoring forward in the league and a key point producer for his team, the Canadiens were unable to make it to the postseason, as Montreal missed out on the playoffs for the first time in half a decade. In the span of just 5 years, Desharnais had gone from beginning his pro career in the ECHL to a breakout year in the best league in the world, and was ready to build on his success even further in the coming season. But first, there was a lockout! During the 12-13 lockout, Desharnais decided to take his talents overseas to Europe and suit up for HC Fribourg-Gotteron of the Swiss National League. The Canadian forward played well for his new Swiss side, scoring at a point-per-game pace with 16 points in 16 games before the lockout ended and Desharnais returned to the Habs lineup. Unfortunately, Desharnais' short trip to Switzerland didn't do much to help his game take the next step forward, since his numbers took a noticeable dip compared to the year prior, as he scored 10 goals and 18 assists for 28 points in 48 games. Despite this sophomore slump, Montreal were able to make it to the playoffs, where Desharnais scored just a single assist in 5 playoff games, as the Habs were eliminated in the first round by the Ottawa Senators. After his 2-year extension was up, and having put up respectable numbers during the contract's tenure, Desharnais was looking for his first big payday, in the form of a longer-term deal with a significantly larger salary. The Canadiens were aware of the forward's continued improvement year on year since joining their organisation, and were happy to oblige. So, on March 15th, 2013, they signed him to a 4-year, $14 million contract extension worth an average annual value of $3.5 million a season. Having just signed the biggest contract of his career, Desharnais wanted to show Montreal that his new deal was money well spent. However, he would no longer be a Hab by his contract's conclusion. The 13-14 season saw the freshly signed Desharnais bounce back from his sophomore slump and become a key point producer for the Canadiens once more, as he scored 16 goals and 36 assists for 52 points in 79 games. This resurgence in his production helped the Canadiens clinch a postseason berth for the second straight season, where Desharnais potted 8 points in 17 playoff games, but Montreal were eliminated in the conference finals by the New York Rangers. The 14-15 season saw Desharnais take a slight step back in his production for the second time in his career, but he still put up serviceable numbers, as he notched 14 goals and 34 assists for 48 points in 82 games. These stats helped Montreal make another appearance in the playoffs, where Desharnais potted a less impressive 3 points in 11 games, as the Canadiens were eliminated in the second round by the Tampa Bay Lightning. The 15-16 season saw Desharnais suit up for his 5th full season with the Habs and look to get his production back to the levels of years prior. Unfortunately, Desharnais' stats continued to decline for the second straight season, as the 29-year-old forward scored just 11 goals and 18 assists for 29 points in a season limited to just 65 games for Desharnais due to suffering a broken foot, which kept him out of the lineup for 3 weeks towards the end of the season. This disappointing production impacted the Canadiens' playoff hopes too, as the Habs were unable to clinch a playoff berth, so they missed out on the postseason for the first time in 3 years. Things had clearly taken a downward turn, and with only 1 year left on his contract, Desharnais needed to step up his game if he wanted to get another big payday. However, before his deal was done, the Canadian forward would be on the move. The 16-17 season saw Desharnais suit up for the Habs once more and look to finally rebound from several years of declining production. However, after scoring just 10 points in 31 games, Montreal decided that they were ready to move on from the hometown forward, as on February 28, 2017, it was announced that Desharnais had been traded to the Edmonton Oilers in exchange for Brandon Davidson. After parts of 7 seasons in Montreal, Desharnais was leaving the only NHL team he had ever known, and was heading west for the first time to suit up for his new Canadian franchise. Desharnais spent the rest of the season with Edmonton and saw his numbers continue to disappoint, as he scored just 2 goals and 2 assists for 4 points in 18 games. Despite this underwhelming production with his new team, Edmonton were able to make it to the playoffs, where Desharnais scored 4 points in 13 games, but the Oilers were eliminated in the second round by the Anaheim Ducks. Once his 4-year contract he had signed back with Montreal had expired, and having seen his production continue to decline for the past 3 years, Edmonton weren't too keen on re-signing Desharnais to another contract. As an unrestricted free agent for the first time in his career, he clearly wasn't a top free agent signing. That said, Desharnais' services were still in demand by teams around the league, but at a large discount compared to years prior. So, on July 4th, 2017, he signed a 1-year, $1 million contract with the New York Rangers. After parts of 8 seasons playing in Canada, Desharnais was leaving the True North behind to rejoin the Eastern Conference and spend a year under the bright lights of Broadway. However, this would be the last contract of his NHL career. The 17-18 season saw Desharnais suit up for the Rangers for the first time and see a noticeable increase in his production compared to the season prior, as the undrafted forward scored 6 goals and 22 assists for 28 points in 71 games. Despite this improvement in his stats, New York failed to clinch their spot in the postseason, as the Rangers failed to make the playoffs for the first time in 8 years. After his 1-year deal had expired, and having shown few signs of being able to return to his career-high numbers, the Rangers were looking to give their younger forwards more opportunities and ice time, so didn't offer Desharnais a new contract. As an unrestricted free agent for the second time in 2 years, and with little to no interest in his services from most teams in the league, on July 2nd, 2018, the Canadian forward decided to take his talents to Russia, as he signed a 1-year contract with Lokomotiv Yaroslavl of the KHL. However, before the season had even begun, Lokomotiv decided that they wished to remove some of the older veteran players off their books, so released Desharnais from his contract with the team. Shortly after, on August 25th, Desharnais found another KHL team interested in his services, as he signed a one-year deal with Avant-Garde Omsk. With arguably his most eventful and most turbulent off-season completed, Desharnais was ready to take to the ice in the best league in Europe and show that he could still be a productive player in a top hockey league in the world. The 18-19 season saw Desharnais suit up for Avant-Garde for the first time and have a good season with the Russian side, as the 32-year-old forward scored 7 goals and 21 assists for 28 points in 58 games. This production helped Avant-Garde make an appearance in the KHL playoffs, where Desharnais potted 7 assists in 18 games, but Omsk were eliminated in the Gagarin Cup finals by CSKA Moscow. After his one-year deal with Omsk had ended, and having produced a decent season in Russia, rather than stick around with Avant-Garde or join a different KHL team, Desharnais decided to take his talents to a familiar franchise in another European league, as on April 26, 2019, he signed a 2-year contract with HC Fribourg-Gotteron of the Swiss National League. To this day, David Desharnais is a member of Fribourg's roster. At the time of this recording, the alternate captain of the team has scored 23 points in 29 games, so he seems to have found his scoring touch again and picked up with the team right where he left off during the 12-13 lockout. Outside of Switzerland, Desharnais has also got his hands on some silverware this season, as he played in one game for Team Canada as they took home the 1920 Spengler Cup, so he can add that cup to his trophy cabinet already filled with QMJHL and ECHL awards. At 33 years old, and with 1 year left on his contract after this season concludes, Desharnais shall be sticking around in Switzerland for the immediate future. But what he decides to do, or where he decides to go after that, is anyone's guess. So, will Desharnais sign another deal in the NLA once his current contract expires? Will he take his talents to another league around the world, or will he decide to hang up his skates and call it a day as he approaches 35 years of age? I guess time will tell. But regardless of what Desharnais decides to do following next season, the Canadian forward had a pretty solid career in the NHL. In 524 regular season games, Desharnais scored 87 goals and 195 assists for 282 points, as well as 17 points in 51 playoff games. Considering he had to defy all the odds and fight his way up from the ECHL just to debut in the National Hockey League, let alone play over 500 league games, and it's clear that this undrafted forward's career certainly could have gone a lot worse. And there you go. That's what happened to David Desharnais. What do you guys think about Desharnais' career? Was it good, bad, or do you think he will find a way to make a return to the NHL in the next few years? I think it's pretty unlikely, but you might disagree. Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye. A big thank you to Adam Budziszewski, Chris Gadsby, Connor B, Jordan Whitehead, and Paul Malia, as well as a huge thank you to Max Artis and The Legacy for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.